Okay. Hey guys. All right. This is going to be the last new skill we learn with factoring. And we're learning how to, if I can get the camera the right angle, factor perfect square trinomials. Okay? That's better. All right. So, I don't know if you remember from the last unit we did when we were multiplying polynomials. I mentioned the word perfect square trinomial, and it's something that you achieve when you multiply something like this, a number plus a number times that same number plus that other same number, okay? Well, now what we're doing is we're going from the multiplied form back to its factored form, okay? So, let's talk about what this means, all right? So the mathematical definition is this. A number squared plus 2 times the square root of that number times the square root of the last number plus the last number squared, okay? I know that doesn't make sense yet, but it will in a minute. Or, there's two cases, a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, okay? So in this case, a and b, so a is the coefficient of your first term, and b is the last number, okay? If you recall another thing too, write this down. So this is our a term and our c term, okay? All right, so it's basically a mathematical definition that we have to memorize, okay? And it'll make it easier if you're able to recognize it because it will factor into a certain form always, all right? So your steps to figure out if it is a perfect square trinomial are this. You see if the first and the last terms are perfect squares, okay? So, and then you see if the square root of the first and last terms times 2 equals the middle term. I know that's a lot of words. It will make sense in a second. Let's look at this example, okay? So I have x squared plus 6x plus 9, okay? I'm looking at the coefficient of my first term, which if there is no coefficient is 1, okay? And I'm looking at the last term. First criteria, are they perfect squares? Yes, they are. They're both perfect squares, okay? Now, so check. Yes, step 1, all right? Now, I see what the square root of 1 is. The square root of 1 is 1, okay? The square root of 9 is 3, okay? So now I see, does the middle term, does 6 equal 3 times 1 times 2, or 2ab? So 2 times 1 times 3. Does 6 equal that? It equals 6. 6 equals 6. Yes. So because of that, this is a perfect square trinomial, okay? Now, let's look at how this factors. So it says that if it is in this form, then it will be the a times the b, the a plus the b times a plus the b, or a plus b squared, because anything times itself means that it is squared, okay? So, in this case, because the first term has the coefficient of 1, it will just be x, okay? So I'm just going to, I could write 1x, but I don't really need to do that, okay? I take this, and then say, so I have x plus 3, that's the square root, times x plus 3, or you will write it as this. The final answer will need to be x plus 3 squared, okay? So, and again, if I were to multiply this to get this, I would have x times x is x squared. The outside x times 3 is 3x. Inside 3x, 3x plus 3x is 6x, and then 3 times 3 is 9, okay? All right, so again, let's go back over this one problem. So my first step is I see if the first and the last terms are perfect squares. Then I take the square root. This becomes my a term, this becomes my b, okay? Right? So then I see if 2 times a times b which is 2 times 1 times 3 equals 6. It does, so I know it's a perfect square trinomial. Then it factors into this, a plus b, right? A plus b times a plus b, or a plus b squared. Okay, so another thing too is that, yes, you need to know this definition. This is also, there's more than one way to factor this. The other way is to do how we did a couple days ago, where we had the x squared plus bx plus c. That's another way of factoring this as well, okay? All right, so there's more than one way to do it. All right, the second one, we have 9x squared minus 24x plus 16. So right now it's got a minus here. I think that will likely be the second definition, which is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, okay? So let's take a look at this. So I see if, I'm sorry, 9 and 16 are perfect squares, and they are. Okay, so I'm going to write that. Let me use a darker color. I think that's a little bit hard to see up there. So, yes, they are. They are perfect squares. So to find my a and my b term, I take the square root of 9, which equals 3. That is a, okay? A is 3, okay? Then for this one, I take the square root of 16, which is 4. 4 is b, okay? Now, I'm going to see if, in this case, the only thing that changes is I do negative 2, because it's minus here, negative 2 times the a term times the b term. So I'll take, because I have negative here, I'm going to take the sign with the number. So let's see, does negative 2 times 3 times 4 equal negative 24? 3 times 4 is 12, times negative 2 is negative 24. So yes, this is, again, is a perfect square trinomial, all right? Now, all I have to do to write it is I take a minus b, a is 3, and it's going to be one thing you need, I'm sorry, let me back up. This a here, a squared, that's the coefficient, okay? So I'm still going to put my x down. So I'll have 3x, okay, minus 4, okay, then times 3x minus 4, all right? Or, and I want you to get used to this, it will be 3x, let me write that a little bit better, 3x minus 4 squared. Because again, that expands to this times this, okay? So again, the steps are, you see if the first and the last terms are perfect squares. If they are, move on to the next step. Take the square root to find your a and your b, okay? Then the next step is to see if the middle term is 2 or negative 2 times a times b, okay? Then you rewrite it as ax minus b or ax plus b, okay? All right, now, moving on to the last one, we have fractions. Oh no, fractions. It's okay. We do the same thing we have always done. It's just we have to remember our computation rules with fractions. So we do the same thing we just did. We see if the coefficient of the first term, our a, is going to be, and the last term are perfect squares. Okay? They are, because I have the square root of 1, which is 1, right? And that equals a. Okay? Now 1/4, we went over this back, I think earlier, or last semester. We talked about fractions, perfect square fractions. 1/4 is because both the top and the bottom of, or both the numerator and the denominator are perfect squares. So the square root of 1/4, okay, I would take the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. Those are both perfect squares, okay? And I end up with 1/2. Square root of 4 is 2, square root of 1 is 1. Now, my last step is to see, and that is b, okay, is to see if I end up with, I'm going to write a 1 here so it makes it a little easier. Does negative 1, I'm trying to find negative 1, so So I'm going to take a, so I take 1, I take negative 2 times 1 times 1/2. Okay? So 2 times 1/2, negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, times 1/2 is 1. So yes, it is. So my factored form then is going to be x minus 1/2 squared. And I went ahead and wrote that in condensed form, but you know that what it is x minus 1/2 times x minus 1/2. Okay. All right. Try to watch this video more than once. There's more rules to this, and you will need to remember these mathematical definitions. But tomorrow we'll combine all the skills we've learned together, and we will do mixed problems. Okay?